All right, folks. Let's get back to let's get back to our show. And Matt, right there, what you saw again when mainstream media is fixated on a New York Times CNN poll. I'm going to say this again for everybody who's watching, for everybody who's actually watching. When Black PAC dropped both of their polls, only one mainstream show invited Adrian Shropshire on. When Higher Heights dropped their poll, only one mainstream show, and it was Joanne Reed's show. We had a reproductive rights organization drop their poll. Nobody invited them. The Leadership Conference on Civil Rights just dropped their poll. How many mainstream folks call them? Zero. I can keep going. The fact of the matter is, Matt, when black people poll black people, and the entire poll is black people, Black Future Labs released a survey, and if I'm correct, they surveyed 211,000 black people. And MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS, News Nation, all of these folks, One America News, Newsmax, not one of them invited them on. And so that's the real issue. These mainstream media folks, white mainstream media, they do not understand black people, and they're trying to get mainstream white media organizations to feed them polling data that underpolls black people.
Well, let me first say, brother, you ice cold to be on your own show, go on another show, and come right back to your show and take no breaks, man. You cold, and I got to give you some love for that. It was impressive what you did. But I think you're right, and I think on top of that, not only do they not reach out to these groups, they don't give those groups the credence of having the statistical ability to give them results that are bona fide. And that's really the issue. I mean, if you look at Leland's response, you delineated 4 or 5 names immediately. And what was his response? Oh, you've given us names we need to look into. Well, if you have anybody on your staff that's doing basic work, they should be able to find that there are groups that are polling and have this data in a bona fide way and have it in a way that it can be trusted. Because as Mondale said earlier, I thought he said it brilliantly. He said, I don't trust the polls because I have the actual data. I know, what people are really saying because we truly have the data, but that data is not being reported because some of it is perfunctory, right? Some of it is they just want to make the point, like you said, this is about race, and they want to reference whomever they think gets the credibility in the public square as to their polls. But we know there are far more polls than Quinnipiac and all these others where they're actually getting the data that gives it a better light. It casts it in a true light. So I think this is a matter of media elitism, number one, and I think this is a matter, number two, of them not doing the investigation to find who really has that data and whether that data that they're reporting from the New York Times or elsewhere is really the true, credible, bona fide data.
I can't. In fact, I'm going to pull this up right here, Michael. This was on, let's see here. This was on, so October 2nd. Go to my iPad. October 2nd, latest results from Wave 2 of the Black Voter Project survey offering insight into what's changed since Harris took over. This was an analysis of 2,400 black people. 2,400. Look at this right here. First of all, the second wave fielded July 27th through August 19th, included 1,621 respondents, 1,146 of which were recontacted after participating in Wave 1. The second wave also included an oversample of 475 respondents from 7 swing states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Why is this important? These are all black. Right. And so if you want to have a conversation, News Nation, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS, OWN, Newsmax, and all y'all, about what black people think, how about you talk to the folks who only surveyed black people? Whereas the other polls, they got 150, 200, maybe 322 black people. Come on, man.
Hold on,
Michael, I'm coming back.
Well, Roland, when he was teeing up that segment before he brought you on, I knew which direction he was coming from. I've been in media 14 years. I could tell he hadn't talked to any African-American pollsters, number one. Number two, what a lot of these mainstream media outlets are doing, and when you cite Siena Times, they're usually an outlier. So if that's who you're citing, I already know which direction you're going in. But what you have is a lot of mainstream media who are trying to drive ratings and capitalize on this story. And they're not bringing on African-American pollsters. You blew them away. If they knew, I think if they knew how much you knew before they brought you on, they wouldn't have brought you on because you totally blew up their whole spot. Okay. So what happens is a lot of these mainstream media outlets don't want to listen to African Americans when it comes to talking about our own community. What's happening here, I disagree with President Obama's approach. I kind of understand what he was trying to do. The main thing that really needs to happen is we have to talk policy and talk issues to African-American men and listen to them so we can explain to them how these policies impact their lives and tell them to compare these policies to Donald Trump, okay? Because it's binary. People, they should definitely look at Donald Trump's policies or his lack of policies and lack of specificity for his policies. So excellent interview, Roland.
I just think here, Mondale, again, that what we're dealing with, we're literally dealing with lack of cultural competence.
I mean,
yes.
Bro, listen, not just in that interview I just watched, and I don't know how you do that and not lose your stuff, because ain't no way in hell I could have sat through that. Leland is out of his mind with all of this he's talking about. But what I want to do is I want to go back to that Obama interview, and this is what happened. He gave them a football in a time where we don't need to give them any
precisely
at all.
What he did was he gave an opening.
An alley-oop.
So now all these people are talking about
exactly.
it. And as opposed to what the data shows.
Right.
No.
Right.
And let's be real clear. Obama should be challenging white men.
Yes.
Obama should be challenging white women. He should be challenging Latino men.
Right.
But because the reality is this here. When you look at a lot of these polls, even the NAACP survey that came out, those were brothers who hadn't voted in 2 or 3 elections.
Exactly.
So there's a difference between a likely voter,
who they're talking
registered voter, and a non-voter.
Right. So let me break that down. That's an important fact, and that's what I was going to say about that poll. Here's why black voters, the Black Voter Project is so important as well. Yes, it's all black, but guess what? It's 2,400 people. Most of these national polls for 300 million voters is about that same size. Black people are 20% of the population, so they are absolutely catching what black people are feeling in that Black Voter Project poll. But what I want to say, though, also is there are 9.6 million black men that are registered to vote in this country. 9.6 million, right? Of that 9.6 million, 52% have not voted in the last 4 federal elections, or only 1, with the majority of them being non-voters. Non-voters. That is not a critique of black men. It's a critique of these tactics that we see that the brother is deploying, Barack Obama, in his point. What I meant by him giving him a football was he actually have people online right now, black women saying things to black men that are pushing back on the way he was talking at brothers. You have sisters saying, go call your mom and get a hug. Y'all are wet. Hit dogs will holler. It's not hit dogs will holler. We just said black men are the biggest supporter of this candidacy.
Right.
Out of everybody in this nation, and now you're tearing them down. If you look at how you form new habits based on the studies from MIT, the habit loop, you can't be using negative actions. You can't be, that's black vernacular for you. You can't be using negative actions thinking you're going to motivate people who don't normally participate to bring out new behaviors. I am so ticked off that Barack made this kind of a stumble when he's the type of president that he was, and also black person he is. He did this with the beer garden, with Skip Gates. He did this at Morehouse. You and I met, Khalil, in 2007 on the Obama campaign in North Carolina. These type of missteps weren't happening this late in the game then. We can't afford to make them right now at all.
And Khalil, here's something that, and again, let me be real clear. I don't want to make this all about Obama.
Right.
Because this is also about how do we reach those brothers. But go to my iPad. I'm going to need Obama to own up to something himself. In 2008,
Slim.
5% of black men voted for GOP.
Right.
95% voted for Senator Barack Obama.
My God.
4 years later, the number was 87% voting for Obama and 11% voting for Romney. Why? Because black men said in 2012, we don't think he did enough for us. Yeah. So Obama lost 6 points among black men. And in 2012, I said, Democrats, y'all better be paying attention. I said, that's a warning sign, because not only with that number, there was a 9-point gap between black men and black women, Obama-Romney. That's why when 16 came, I kept telling sisters, stop saying this is misogyny. Stop saying this is sexism.
Right.
Because you got to go back to what happened in 2012.
Right.
And what you're seeing is black men are saying, just like young black women, they're saying, if you want my vote, you got to court me. You got to talk to me. You got to message to me. You got to communicate to me. Whenever you look at anybody who is really 55 plus, and the reason I know this in my bones, I'm 55. I started watching this with my generation. I remember the conversations that were happening among my peers at Texas A&M. And I was sitting here saying, okay, this different conversation is black folks are having from their mamas and daddies. And so then when you start seeing black folks get more education, make more money, we start operating in tax brackets our parents were never in. The reality is this: my mom and dad combined never made more than $50,000. My third job in the business, I was at $45,000. I've made more money than my parents annually over the last 20 plus years. And then when you start talking about, when you start pushing entrepreneurship, what does that mean? Black folks start talking about corporate taxes. Hell, when you didn't own nothing, you didn't even think about corporate taxes. And so what folk don't understand is that this generation is saying, Democrats, white Democrat consultants, y'all got to stop doing the same thing to attract black people. That's what the numbers are bearing out. And so what these white campaign managers got to do, and these white strategists got to realize, and what people like Future Forward, the PAC, I'm going to show in a minute, what Greg Sargent, how Democrats are putting them on blast with their strategy, they keep running the 1984, 1994, and I dare say Obama plan from 2008, that don't work in 2024.
It can't.
We don't need you to show up in our churches and our community at this time in October. We are persuasion voters. We always have been. We've just been taken for granted to believe we're only mobilization voters. 41% up voter registration in Georgia. 110% up voter registration in Pennsylvania since 2020 in both of those states. We are seeing that there is an appetite in our communities for black voters want to turn out and they want to vote. They want to participate in this election. While I disagree with what my President 44 said, I appreciate that he's called us to task in this moment, because now the news cycle has only been about black men for the last 24 hours. If that can be a continued conversation, I am happy that we're talking about Terrence Woodbury, that we're talking about Black Male Voter Project, that we're talking about Win with Black Men, that we're talking about Black Men Vote, that we're talking about Black Men Bill down in Georgia and John Taylor, and the others that are meeting in YMCA community halls, church basements that are continuing to do this work. So yes, do I wish this was his moment, that he stepped out the wrong way and how he spoke to us? I still think it was important that in the comment he said yet. I think that's a very important word that was missed by a lot of reporters this morning.
Right.
He just hasn't seen it yet, which leaves open the door that, brothers, you have the opportunity to show up in this election in a very important way, and you still can. So this is, as I'm fond of saying, this is a performance review that we can do right now. If I am having my amazing 7-year-old CEO, if she applies for a job later on in her life, and she has the resume of Vice President of the United States, former U.S. Senator, the Attorney General of the state, a district attorney, a partner, and other amazing things on her resume, and you compare it to somebody else that is a 34 convicted felon, I hope she gets that job over someone else. I am hoping that's what President 44 was trying to say, that brothers should not find an excuse to sit out this election and sit on their couch, that they should look at both resumes and make the best decision and the most informed decision that they think is going to
Let me say something real quick.
Do you remember during the interview, Michael, when I said we did that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I need anybody black and you can be non-black watching. But I want y'all to understand we did that. So I sent an email earlier, and I said to the White House, I know what y'all doing with the DOJ. I know. Matter of fact, we got a couple of stories for all the people all these people who keep talking about, again, we didn't get the George Floyd Justice Act. Those things didn't happen, and they're absolutely correct. Don't think for a second that this Department of Justice still has not been doing the work. And unfortunately, what the White House has not done, the White House has not been amplifying this from the podium. And I have personally told Karine Jean-Pierre, why are y'all not sitting here talking about the amazing work of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice? If y'all were doing that, folk would know what y'all talking about. So, for instance, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against an Indiana city alleging discrimination in the hiring process for entry-level police officers at the South Bend, Indiana Police Department. The lawsuit explicitly accuses the city of South Bend of violating Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. I'm going to go ahead and stand up. By using a written exam, it discriminates against black applicants, and a physical fitness test, it discriminates against female applicants. The DOJ's investigation found the department's written exam and physical fitness test did not meaningfully distinguish between applicants who can and cannot perform the position of entry-level police officer. Again, do y'all remember any of this happening when Donald Trump was president? How about this? In Georgia, a federal judge talked about he's not going to reopen the voter registration November's election despite disruptions. But guess what? The DOJ is suing Virginia for removing folks from the voting rolls. Yeah, that's actually happening. Let me also just remind y'all what's going on. So when I hit the White House, remember I said we did that? Go to my iPad. This is what I asked them. The lowest black unemployment rate on record, lower than under Donald Trump, created 2.4 million jobs for black workers as of August 2024. Biden-Harris can say we did that. 400,000 black children lifted out of poverty by increased SNAP benefits through updating the Thrifty Food Plan and continuing to call on Congress to restore the full expanded child tax credit. Guess what? Which benefited and helped 600,000 black kids come out of poverty. Hashtag we did that. They grew black business ownership at the fastest rate in over 3 decades. We did that. When Vice President Kamala Harris went to Detroit, I was there, she talked about how of the black-owned businesses that went out of business during COVID, they have brought 45% of them back. That's called we did that. Go back to my iPad. Under Biden-Harris, they tripled the number of SBA-backed loans to black-owned businesses. We did that. Awarded a record $10 billion in federal contracts to black-owned small businesses in 2023. Hashtag we did that. Invested a record $16 billion in HBCUs. We did that. Secured a $900 increase to the maximum Pell Grant Award, the largest increase in the past 10 years. And anybody knows if you are a HBCU student or a black student at PWI, you likely got a Pell Grant. Approved the cancellation of almost $170 billion in student loan debt for nearly 5 million borrowers. And we know black people have a higher rate of student loan debt than anybody else. Hashtag we did that. Then I ain't done. Home appraisals. Yep. Rooted out racial bias in home appraisals and closed the black-white home valuation disparity gap by 40%. Why is that? Because you had black people who were owning homes, and you had white appraisals going in saying, "Oh no, your house is worth $300,000 when it was worth $500,000." And then the black folks tested them by taking all of the photos off the wall, the black art off the wall, removing the black DVDs, removing the black books and everything, and stripping all the blackness out. New appraisal comes in and appraises at $500,000. Why is that important? Because when you sell your house, you can sell it for $500,000 compared to $300,000, and now you can have a profit on that and now invest that. That did not exist. And y'all remember when I went on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, that right winger out of Florida, he told me, yeah, I don't necessarily, that's anecdotal. No, that actually happened. Go back to my iPad. Under Secretary Marshall Fudge, reduced mortgage insurance premiums for FHA loans, saving 76,000 black households $900 a year. We did that. Cut costs for high-speed internet to 5.5 million black households with the Affordable Connectivity Program. We did that. Distributed $2.2 billion in financial assistance to over 43,000 farmers who experienced discrimination. Black folk, guess what? Biden-Harris, we did that. Led a historical economic recovery. Black wealth, even after adjusting for inflation, is up 60% relative to pre-pandemic levels, the largest increase on record. We did that. Go into health care. Talk about black enrollment for Affordable Care Act covered by 95%, over 1.7 million people since 2020. Lowered monthly premiums for health insurance. Capped insulin at $35 out of pocket. Made sickle cell disease the first focus of the new Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services model. Expanded Medicaid postpartum coverage from 60 days to 12 months. Secured an additional $1.5 billion for Head Start. Delivered $1 billion to more than 40 states to increase the number of school-based mental health professionals. Signed 2 executive orders directing the federal government to address inequality. Protected Black history as an American history. Signed Juneteenth as a national holiday, and you damn right, being from Texas, that matters. Designated Springfield 1908 race riot and Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley national monuments. Signed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act to classify lynching for the first time as a federal hate crime. And for all y'all silly-ass Simple Simon son of a bitches who kept saying we ain't had no black hate crime bill, that's exactly what the hell that is, including the bill that dealt before with the burning of black churches, including the bill that dealt before with Matthew Shepard and the James Byrd Hate Crime Act. So all y'all folk who kept talking about, well, the Asians got a bill, it's amazing how y'all forget that, because now the Department of Justice can use the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill in certain cases when black folks have been harmed. I can keep going on and on and on. So what is required here is for the vice president and for Democrats to stop with all this other nonsense and say, we did that. And so part of the problem here, and I'm gonna go around my panel for a final comment here, and I'm gonna start with you, Michael. The problem here is that a whole lot has been done. They ain't talked about it. They haven't said it. They haven't discussed it from the podium. So folks, in Terrence Woodbury's research, it shows when they are told all of this, they go, damn, they did all that? Yes, they did. And in the focus groups, they shift because they actually hear what got done, which goes right with what they wanted to get done. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, this is what I've been talking about, Roland. Now, you're reading from the September 13th, 2024 fact sheet from whitehouse.gov. I got it right here. President Biden and Vice President Harris are delivering for black Americans. It continues. There's even more than what you covered. This is documented evidence of how we're getting a return on our investment, a tangible, measurable return on our investment for voting for Biden and Harris. Now, you compare that to what Donald Trump is talking about. Compare that to what Donald Trump did during his 4 years in office.
A punk-ass platinum plan that he dropped 2 weeks before the election and forgot even existed. Go ahead.
But hold on. Look at his 3 government shutdowns that happened in the first 2 years of the Trump administration. That third government shutdown was devastating for America, but especially for African Americans. Look at the fact that Donald Trump inherited a healthy economy from President Biden, which was really good yesterday when Biden took credit for it and said we had 75 consecutive months of private sector job growth. Okay, that Donald Trump inherited 4.7% unemployment rate. Donald Trump squandered a healthy economy, and he left office with a negative creation rate of jobs. He lost 2.5 million jobs, the first president since Herbert Hoover to do that in 1929 during the Great Depression. So we have the evidence. They need to break this down into videos, TikTok, Instagram, things like this, and also African-American social media influencers need to do the same thing. Talk about policy, how this impacts you and your communities, and compare that to Donald Trump.
Hey, Matt, I'm going to go right here. Go to my iPad, Matt. House Republicans refuse to join Democrats in denouncing white supremacy.
Of course.
Yes.
Even after 10 black people were killed in Buffalo, you had Republicans who refused to vote for the Jamal Bowens bill, also dealing with calling out extremism. Let me be real clear, y'all. That's Democrats and Republicans in the House. Those are facts, Matt.
Yeah, they are. And, I think what they need to do, Michael stole part of what I was going to say about TikTok. I think, people these days digest things in a lot smaller bites than sometimes we realize. And I think we kind of can get a little echo chambery sometimes when we talk about issues. So I think they need to make them as digestible as possible and as quick, in succession as possible, like that ad you ran a couple weeks ago where they put together all of Donald Trump's sound bites about, I think it was race and just all the horrible things he said into a 1-minute ad where you just see, soundbite after soundbite after soundbite. I think as good as all of these things are, sometimes they fall on deaf ears if they don't, one, give context, and two, put it into digestible form. So what I think they should do is like they do for the State of the Union, where they get one person who's been a beneficiary of that program or one person who's laudable in some respect and just have this person got $900 more on their Pell Grant. This person got this person got this, put a face to it. And then it shows people that there are measurable effects to these policies and they're not just out in the ether. But the more that they do that, the more that they combat what we've talked about on this show, that Atlantic article I've mentioned a few times where the economy is far better than people actually think it is. So part of it is suturing that gap between the rhetoric and the reality that I don't think they're always able to do effectively, but I think that turns into votes and then turns into a win.
Khalil, this right here, go to my iPad. Senate Republicans blocked a bill that dealt with domestic terrorism. This was after the people were killed in Buffalo, 10 black people.
Right.
Okay, it failed in the Senate 47-47, but check this out. I need everybody to understand, because this ain't about, again, caping for Democrats. It's stating facts. It passed the House 222 to 203. One Republican, Adam Kinzinger, voted for the bill. Every single Republican voted against the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act, which would have required federal law enforcement agencies to regularly evaluate and take steps to address the threats posed by white supremacists and other violent domestic extremists. And here's what we know from FBI Director Christopher Wray. What did he say? The greatest domestic threat in America today is white domestic terrorism.
So I do want to stay on that point, but I don't want to forget that this is not about Democrats and Republicans of who you decide to vote for.
It's about policy.
It's about policy. FEMA, right now in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, how many Republicans didn't vote for FEMA relief to go out? How the Speaker of the House is delaying that vote until after the election. This is having disastrous real-time effects on people when we have this level of partisanship and we can't get behind it. I also want to make sure brothers don't get hoodwinked or bamboozled by this conversation and don't believe that just because President Trump pardoned or commuted some sentences in his day, whether it had Kanye or whomever sitting next to his side, don't believe that that was policy that was a benefit for our community. I'm happy that those who got a chance to get back to their families are great, but underneath the Obama administration, we saw close to 12 to 1,700 pardons that happened. I think it was 143. I may be off on those numbers so I can get fact checked underneath the Trump administration. These are, again, it's not about party. It's about facts. It's about you taking back to your community trusted information that you can be a trusted resource. So as people leave this conversation tonight, that we leave the Black Star Network, go back to your communities. Don't be misogynistic. Not that you were in the beginning. So again, not taking on President Obama's mantle.
You sound like him.
Don't let that be an excuse, and I hope that's what he was meaning when he was trying to say. I mean, I'm a big fan of the West Wing, so hopefully this was his red light moment. If those remember the show back in the day, he knew what he was saying to spark a conversation in our community, and I'm happy we got brothers on here tonight. We're going to continue this into the weekend, into next week.
But here's the thing that I need our people to get, Mondale. Again, this is not about, you riding for a party. It's about there were policies that black people said we want. There were policies that were promised. And for all the tangible crowd, I want them to deny these things actually happened. No, these things actually happened. Now, there are brothers and sisters out there who say, well, I didn't see it, I didn't feel it. I heard people say, well, I ain't getting no student loan that was decreased. But guess what? Every time I put this on my social media page, somebody go, I did. So you may not have gotten a relief, but be happy that somebody got relief, and it's $170 billion, and they tried to get rid of all student loan debt relief. but it was a conservative Supreme Court that said no. So if your ass did not vote in 2016 for Hillary Clinton, or you sat on the couch and you ain't vote for nobody, you also got to own this because Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices. So folks need to step up and deal with reality of what's going on. And now ask yourself the question, what is Donald Trump promising to deliver? What is Vice President Kamala Harris promising to deliver? And what are the Republicans in the House and the Senate promising to deliver? And what we do know, I don't care what Trump says or how often he lies, Project 2025 is absolutely the full-scale agenda of the right if Trump wins the White House and they control the House and or the Senate.
Listen, I mean, anybody that don't believe that the Heritage Foundation will be in charge of policy for Trump did not.
Like the Federalist Society was in charge of the federal judges.
Absolutely. And every judge he appointed came from the Federalist Society. So if you don't know what that is, these are the most conservative folk in law. And they are absolutists when it comes to being anti-black. Let me just say a couple things, because a couple things can be true and are true in this space, right? It is absolutely fact that this election is probably the most consequential election of our life. And unfortunately, we can't use that and have legs because we've used it so many times in the past that it sounds like boy who cried wolf. But let's also mention a couple things. Black men aren't sitting out elections because they're lazy or because there's a pathology that exists in us, right? We have to remember that at 40, 50 years after the passage of the 15th Amendment, 1910, only about 20% of black men were exercising their franchise. Right now in 2024, only 26% of black men in this country are super voters. So in that time, I want people to be reminded that it would be illogical to say that black men were lazy or apathetic in 1910. No, there were reasons that black men didn't vote. Those reasons were poll tax, literacy tests, and also the threat of death from the Klan and lynching. I would argue right now, I will posit right now, from the data that I have, black men still face those same 3 threats. The poll tax is the underemployment and unemployment of black men. Black men are, in some spaces in rural America, 18.5% unemployment rate. The literacy test comes in the form of them underfunding or not funding public schools, taking out books, rejecting DEI, and also the over-expelling and suspending of black boys from school and putting them as special needs when that's not the case. Then the death of threat might not be Klan without their uniform, but it's damn sure political actors in the form of police officers. So when you consider this, and you also consider that, couple that with the fact that we know election cycle after election cycle, the way you increase someone's likelihood of participating in an election is spending resources on what they feel like culturally competent program that's not transactional. We don't see that. And that was my pushback on us being in the media. We're being in the media is creating stories like Leland. Enough of us aren't watching Black Star. The fact that we can only get this story here and everybody else is hearing what Leland is saying is the problem. The media has never been a friend of black men, an ally of black men. But this trope, this idea that Obama threw them is going to take legs, not just with white media, with the likes of FBA and then idiots like Charlamagne the God that play with important.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I am on Lawrence O'Donnell at 10:20 tonight.
Good.
I'm on Good Morning America tomorrow. And so we're going to hit this as hard as possible. And so, gentlemen, I truly appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
For everything. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for the online history classes that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history. I teach 2 online history classes, Saturdays 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and Sundays 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Saturdays is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And then on Sundays, Black resistance movements, from Christopher Columbus to the Haitian Revolution and the Black Power movement, 1492 to 1968. So we have classes coming up this weekend. Classes on sale, $80. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it any time. We have a bundle pack of courses. You can register for both classes also. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. Even after the course is over with, you still have access to the full class. You can go back and watch it anytime. And then Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding transatlantic slave trade. That meets this weekend also. You can we have the course outline here that you can download as well.
So it gives you a lesson plan for each class session. There's about 100 articles that we reference. The first class is about 200 slides, 15 books that we reference. You don't have to buy any of the books to follow along in class. Click right here to download the lesson plan also, okay? I show you the, it's a very visual class, so I show you the excerpts of the books right on the screen, all right? Okay, so the content is PG-13. You can use this with your children as well. I don't do a lot of cursing. It's not overly vulgar or anything like that. It's nothing like that, okay?